Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of K9s Talking Sense. I'm your host, Cameron Ford, and this is a special episode, another Trainers Jam, this time with Ellis, Michael Nezbeth, and Forrest Micke, along with myself, talking about all kinds of various topics. So without really any further delay, I just want to thank all of our sponsors, Get Set, Psy K9, Precision Explosives, for sponsoring this episode. Hope you guys enjoy it, and let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of K9s Talking Sense. I'm your host, Cameron Ford, and surrounded by some of the most amazing trainers I know in the industry. And that is, I'll start off with Michael Ellis. I know. Forrest Micke. And Michael Nezbeth.
I'm just happy to be here.
Me too, dude.
Yeah, right? I just thought we'd make this another little Trainers Jam that we've done in the past, but with the other Michael joining us for the first time. You've been with me, of course, before, but this time you get to join in a little Trainers Jam session with us.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That sounds like you guys have talked for a couple of years or known each other for a while or something.
Yeah. We've definitely known each other for, gosh, I'm going to say we're getting probably close to, I'm guessing 10 years before?
Probably around that,
yeah. So what brought you here, Michael Nezbeth, was we were doing that first time of a seminar called Skills Transition. I'll let you kind of explain what it's about, and then we'll kind of just take the conversation from there.
Yeah. So basically, me and Cameron have talked for a while about this, and because of what we get to do with the traveling and stuff, we can see common areas or like common threads where there are some problems or challenges that the police dogs run into. And one of those common threads is the ability for the dogs to kind of have mental flexibility between, okay, I'm doing something that is really exciting to me, or I think I'm going to do something that's really exciting to me, to something that may not have as much value to them, right? And we talked for a bit and figured out like, hey, there's some things that we do to help prepare the dogs for that. And I think it's always a good thing to be able to transfer something to me that I think is going to be like actionable, and people are going to be able to put into practice. So we kind of talked and then came up with this idea, and this was our first go at it. I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, it was. We did it with the local agencies and a few from out of state, from Colorado, that came and joined us, and it was really fun to kind of see. We were both surprised. Like, the dogs did really well at transitioning from patrol work to detection work, better than we expected.
Yeah.
But there was some cool things that we got to kind of highlight, which was the fact that these skill sets, to be able to switch, there's a bigger piece to that, which is teaching the dog how to manage itself, how to manage arousal, and handlers how to kind of work their way through. My dog just did something, like you said, really valuable to the dog, like bite work. There's a lot of, arousal and history and reinforcement to it. To then something like detection, which they may like, they may not like. In this group, we had a lot of dogs.
Or obedience.
Or obedience. That was
so many dogs were bummed out about that shit.
Yep. Well, and that was the part that we actually brought them to, was to do obedience between the tasks, to kind of get the dog back.
And isolating to them that obedience from a different profile is a skills transition within itself, right? It's not just, I always say, like, heavy metal stuff. Patrol dogs love the heavy metal stuff, like get out, headbang, and go crazy. But just that switch from that to kind of some more collected thinking on the dog's behalf is kind of a skills transition, right?
Yeah. I think that's where a lot of the handlers had their takeaways, was the ability to learn how to switch, deal with that motivation and kind of like manage it, and then say, okay, get yourself in the right mindset. Like I was talking about with them, set the tone, get the dog in the right mindset. We're going to do this task now. And it was a couple of different ways we got there, but one of the biggest ones I got was just the calmness. Calm breeds calm. Go ahead.
No, you're touching on something that I think is, Forrest and I have been having lots of conversations about this, because I think it's one of the more difficult and more interesting aspects of dog training. How do you have larger chains of behaviors, and different sections of those have different value to the dogs, and you need the dog at different arousal levels to perform all of them, right? And so are there some conceptual frameworks you can work off? And one of the things that's hard in law enforcement, you guys are going to see it all the time, is that people skipped that in the beginning. So you have these dogs that were way overbuilt, and during foundation stuff, they didn't learn this skill. It's much easier to take an adolescent dog and teach them these skills as they're learning than to come back with a 2-year-old dog that they've just been letting go wild and then install them. But the idea would be for a common thing is the dog has to commit to a low arousal activity in order to access a higher arousal activity, kind of classic pre-max stuff, right? And then once that flow through is, then they have to come back to do this again for another opportunity. And then there's a point in there where the dogs start to accept that. Like at first there's this disconnect where they're like, no, I really want that. And it can affect them going back, the performance on the lower arousal, the less valuable activity. But once they accept it, then they realize this is just another opportunity to do this, and then you'll allow me to go back in. And so,
or I think I heard you say that you didn't like to pre-mac the things. Like it felt like you were concerned, like if you tried to associate the scent work to the biting, for example, that it would cause problems here.
So I have seen that sometimes, and I'm not opposed to pre-mac. Principle. I think that for sure, based on we all know, like it's a dog by dog kind of thing. But sometimes I've found like a little space between, like a little gap between, hey, you want to do bite stuff, or you did bite stuff. Hey, let's do some detection stuff, and then immediately back to the bite stuff. Sometimes the byproduct is not super clear detection because it's like
the next thing is going to go back in time and affect.
Maybe over-aroused.
Oh my gosh, I got to go. I'm going to just go through the motions of this and not really truly commit to the behavior. And it's a dog by dog basis. You know, there are some dogs that just have no problem with it, and there are other dogs that a little bit more challenging.
So do you approach it with a pause, like contain yourself, pause it down?
Yeah,
some behavior.
Because it's actually how we train too. It's like we don't often make the connections that closely between the things. It's more like you want the dog to accept their fate in a sense. Like you are disciplined enough to know and understand this is the thing that you're doing right now. And actually my work lies in trying to make this a little bit better for you, so it's not such a tough sell to you to go from this thing to this thing. Or it's not such a defeat to you. I know that thing's available and you really like this, but I'm going to make this a little bit better, do my work to incentivize this further, so it's not such a disparity. You guys, the thing was you were doing, the skills transition was going from one skill to another, but a dog being able to accept either, that's a skill in itself.
Yes, it is.
That's what I was looking at. That's the skill. It was like that clarity of task like you're talking about, and having like rituals or making this thing a little bit better because you're aware that there's a disparity here, which was on the police trainers to kind of acknowledge like, oh, I can make obedience better by reinforcing it a lot more than I'm doing, especially when bite works at hand or whatever. But that's the skill. Right?
That and we talked a bit about like, call it like violating the contract or violating expectations. So like as they get maybe a little bit more prepared to dealing with it, I like to use a place board as like my
as your
beginning stage.
spot,
Like here, get your head here with me. We're going to go do this thing instead. And when we establish kind of those expectations of like, here's that anchor, they still show preference. We did a little bit of it when we were working with them, our first reps through, but they'll get to the place board and the options here are obedience or detection. Well, the intrinsic value of detection kind of already supersedes what the obedience is. So we'll see them on the place board and all their energy is towards detection. And I tell them, hey, violate the contract. Get them off of here. Let's do some obedience with them. And at least get them to the point where they're not just stuck in that anticipation and starting to think a bit. And once we have their brain a little bit with us, everything kind of becomes easier for them to accept guidance. You know,
I think you're onto something really important there, which is the idea that you can have a dog doing something, but that you don't have their brain completely, right? And so when you violate a dog's expectations like that, we set up circumstances like that as well. Like, okay, you have to play with me when there's a decoy out, right? There may be something simple like that. Like, that's way more valuable. And you have a dog that's playing with you, but they're playing with you while their brain is over there. Like their eyes are rolling.
Everything,
their
ears are looking this way.
And they're here, but they're not here, right? And that's the thing there. Your dog's telling you they want detection. You're like, no. We're gonna do this, and you don't get that at all unless you can fully commit to this.
Yeah.
Right? So those transitions.
Yeah.
And that means this is what we're doing now. You think that. This is what we're doing now. You think that until they accept it completely and you can feel that full energetic.
Exactly.
Did you think that's what was happening on day 2 and they came in and they bit Michael and then they went out in the hallway, so you gave them a pause, and then they had to go into detection, and you noticed especially the dogs that were the heavy metal dogs and the biting, and you weren't doing a lot, right?
No.
You're like, you were all smooth
still
with
fairly
it,
calm.
like trying to set them up so it wasn't like such a big you weren't getting them amped so that they had to go and do this thing. They weren't gassed, and also they didn't have such a great time with you. But a lot of those dogs were kind of in the search space, and the problem wasn't that hard, right? But they were just like, half their mind was back here, like to Michael's point.
Yeah, and kind of what I did after the stronger, really motivated heavy metal dogs, I just had the handlers sit in the space with them, just take a seat, sitting in that room, and just hang out.
Yeah.
And then the position of the handler being in a relaxed position, sitting down, not standing up, all these things that the dog was using contextually to tell it that it could be doing this or that, took that away. And then when the dog kind of, what I would say, surrendered to what was going on, would become inquisitive. And then through their being inquisitive, they start smelling the furniture nearby. And I tell them when those dogs start smelling the furniture, get up and start walking with them. Let them start searching the space. And nearly every single dog, when we did that, got up and went right to the odor, which was across the room. So it wasn't even like it was close to him. It was at least 10 feet away. And the dog would go right across the room, right to odor. Some dogs went right to odor right away and responded to it. Other dogs worked that area and then eventually got around and got to it. But it was, take that, the term I steal is from the Special Forces community, but the term they use is take that pregnant pause. Stop, wait, let things settle, collect yourself. Because in that calm breeds calm mindset, you have much more awareness of what's going on, much more ability to take things in. It's the same for the dogs.
Yeah, you were waiting for something to happen. You weren't getting in the way of trying to force something that might not be ready to happen.
And to your point, what would happen, the first couple dogs that were like that, when the handlers kind of just, the dogs were calmer than they were in the bite work, but then what they did was, once they started, the dogs were kind of, like you said, their mind was someplace else. They were kind of they were like acting like they were sniffing. And even when the handlers presented, the dog would like put their nose and then move on. They weren't really sniffing.
It's like they're going through the motions. So,
it was.
That's the same. My brain is thinking about biting.
Yes.
But I'm
supposed to do this. So that's what they would do.
Yeah.
And what we got when we had the dogs that would settle, and then we waited for them, like your words, give us permission to go do the search, it had really profound effects.
You know who did really good at that? In the arms of the angel.
That's the winner. If there was an award for winner of the seminar, it was that dog.
Which dog was that one?
With
yes,
the hematoma,
I
his
know.
head
Our
wrapped.
dog with the hematoma with his head wrapped up.
That is so
And it looks like the Flying Nun, for those who remember that back in those days. But it's, the poor thing had the hematoma, so one ear was wrapped up, and its whole head was looked like a mummy.
Yeah.
But that dog crushed it when we said, okay, when the dog was into it, started sniffing the space. I mean, literally went right to the odor, like, boom, here it is.
Right.
Like, it knew it the whole time.
It was just cool because you were feeling bad for him, but the dog like, it was legit.
I know. The handler brought him in. I was like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing, like, I definitely am of the mindset of like, hey, calm breeds calm.
Yeah.
But I think something that also sometimes can get missed on a little bit is that we do need to teach the dogs the ability to work and skills transition in a high state of arousal.
Absolutely.
Right? If we just avoid the high state of arousal, it doesn't really get to what the problem. I want you to.
We have to address the problem.
Exactly, to have these expectations. And for some dogs, like we did on day one, just the expectation. So the dog thinking that they're about to go and get to do bite work, and then saying, hey, never mind, the person surrendered and you don't get to do the fun, sexy part. But now that you kind of got teased in that, I need you to actually go and search. Sometimes that's even more difficult for them to deal with, right? They don't
get to satisfy.
Yeah, they can't satiate, right?
Yeah, so 100%.
And especially if in all the training they get the bite.
Which they,
right?
they do.
And then what you've done there is it's a form of violating expectations. You've broken a logical pair in their mind, right? And they cannot deal
And they
with
say, no, that's not the rules.
like
and for the type of dogs we all tend to look for, that's going to frustrate them. You're going to create tons of arousal through that.
Yeah.
And that you touched on something that I think is critical, that idea that they have to learn to perform in high states of arousal as well, but you don't tackle it during the teaching phase. That's the idea around how much do you work on all your behavior development and isolation. It's the common question we're saying. If starting a young dog out, obviously detection is completely separate from bite work. We're not putting these things together with an adolescent dog. The sooner you introduce that idea, the better it goes.
Yeah.
But each of the individual disciplines needs its own time in isolation to be strong enough so you don't just destroy it when you try to combine it. So if my detection is weak and I'm trying to do this, my dog's not going to perform, and you're going to wreck your detection, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
And so that's to me, kind of the interesting question. Can I introduce ideas around this early enough so that you're not go all the time?
Yeah.
You can shut things off and on.
Yeah.
And then push you.
Yeah,
So that
and
you have
that's
to think and work in a
and that's kind of got so one of the things that I do is we'll raise young dogs up to prepare them to go to police work. And it's kind of reverse engineering. So like a lot of times I'll go and be like, oh wow, this is a very common issue that we're seeing. And then I get to mess around with like younger dogs in preparation for it. So that's a question that I've had, when do we start introducing, a different task in conjunction with that pause to something that is more exciting and arousing to the dog. And we've talked about it a bit, and instead of maybe putting the dogs directly to what their target odors are for hunting, sometimes we'll do some basic bite work stuff that gets the dogs excited, and then have the context cues of different locations, different trains. So this is our bite work room.
Sure.
This is our detection room, and then kind of bouncing between those two and being like, okay, well, it's not your target odor, but you get to go hunt for your ball or hunt for. And just letting them kind of early on without dirtying up proficiency in both of those areas, get them a little more familiar with it. And I've had pretty decent success with stuff like that.
do very similar things.
Yeah.
I thought for having 3 days for you guys to work with them, that you appropriately elevated the challenge of the dogs as you went through it. And I was thinking to really get to a point where you're doing the heavy metal stuff and you're asking them for a really difficult skill transfer, so to speak. How many days would you need, you think, to do that in a way you felt good about?
Yeah, the hard part.
Or something?
Yeah, the hard part with that is that it depends on who and what the dog's capabilities are when they show up.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say what a really hard time frame is. The framework for this entire thing was we'll kind of get a feel for where the dogs are at, but more importantly, it's not so much the time that they have here with us and what we're going to accomplish here, but trying to give them actionable things that they can continue with when they get the dogs back to where they're at.
I think these discussions around the development of dogs for law enforcement need to be had more, right? The traditional methodologies for rearing and preparing and brokering and buying dogs for law enforcement are putting animals into those positions that we're not given the skills at the right stage developmentally. If you and I if we're all raising young dogs for law enforcement, we would plant these seeds a little bit at a time the whole way along. So there's no big conflict, as opposed to this broker bought dog that's been made berserk for 2 years. And they're choking it off of everything. It's totally cranked. And now you go, oh, hey, by the way, you have to learn to turn this off and on and switch lights.
I look at I look at those and I say a lot of these broker bought dogs that we've just imported from the warehouses in
Slovakia.
Are they're not prepared actually to be police dogs. They're prepared to pass the selection test, right? And it's not, you're not thinking, they're just hey, we just need them to sell, not need them to necessarily succeed. So I think that's also what fuels it. Well, they want to see the dog crazy for a ball. We'll do everything to make it crazy for a ball, right? But I think there's a lot of value in having access to them.
And because, looking at it from the vendor perspective, the other thing they have to deal with is make the dog trainer proof for whatever agency they're going to, because they don't know at first. And when the school is only 6 weeks long, there's some pretty heavy duty training going on that these dogs have to make it through so they don't break in their hands. And those that break sometimes get brought back, and then the vendor is the one holding that bag, because I think you guys talked about in your podcast with your wife, there's a responsibility there that it's tough to be the vendor in the sense that I don't know where this dog could go to, and I don't know their training. Instead of washing out the dog, sometimes we need to wash out the trainer. Because of what the trainer is failing to do or failing to prepare. And it's Could be any number of reasons. There's lots of reasons to why that happens. But we have to look at it from both perspectives, not just the dog didn't do it. And then if we had trainers with more time under their belt, good investment in their education, so they learn how to problem solve and build and do these things that they really need to do, we could actually get these younger dogs and cultivate them better. But I think what we have to start looking at as certain things start changing within the U.S. is what we're talking about, the ones who can raise and build dogs. It's not going to be big numbers, but the answer that when I always ask this question and bring it up, I was, that's way too expensive to do. I got to have to sell the dog for $90,000.
Yeah.
And my thing is, not really. I've done it now a number of times. Just like me and Natalie probably did 15 dogs in the course of like 3 years. We raised from puppies to be working dogs. Now, granted, it was detection, so we had a little bit of easier go of it, but I definitely think you can, and I know you have with a lot of your dogs, is raise them to do this dual purpose function. Yes, it takes time, but the way you make your money on it on the business side is you're not just doing one dog at a time. And that's where it costs more. Yeah. If you're doing multiple dogs.
And I don't think you have to have the dogs trained perfectly before they go out. You have to plant certain seeds at the right stage developmentally. You don't have to fully flesh it out, right? So that's the thing. Like, if I had to have a push button police dog that would do all this stuff, and I was going to train it until it was 3 years old, and this dog was ready to rock when it hit the street, that would be an expensive dog for sure. Yeah. If you put all that individual time into refining everything, but that's not the problem. The problem is the mental inflexibility that comes with the way these dogs are reared for the first year and a half of their life. And you don't need a whole bunch of extra work in there to get the dogs to be able to shift gears a little bit, I think.
It's critical flexibility skills that we have to build in.
There's no harnessing of big feelings. They don't know how to move between one perceived value to another. They get really stuck on things, so not flexibility there. And then there's no calm before the storm. They're just like all or nothing.
It's all storm.
It's all, and we've gotten to the point where we do more. Like when I came up in IGP stuff, you wanted kind of maximum expression of energy all the time. You were looking for these dogs that are doing everything at the super high state, right? And so you get used to that kind of way of developing the dog. Come out, boom, 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 go off. Come out, boom, 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 go off, right? Which is great for making these really extreme expressions for short periods of time. Terrible for a police dog, terrible for a ring dog. Like none of those things. So we wind up, when the dogs are young, as soon as they're bought in, you come out, you do some biting, and then we chill. Decoys around, things like that, and we hang out. And then you can go back to biting, and then we chill again. Like, you're introducing that concept of toggling from high to low arousal level, and you just take the time. It doesn't have... You were talking about anchoring the dog to a place bed. There, it's an easy behavior. My young dog, maybe I don't want to pollute my downs and my sits because my dog's going to be a little agitated. Get in your place bed here. Just shift gears. We're going to just chill here for a little bit. Nothing's going to happen.
And I tell that we had the guys doing a similar thing. Usually, typical police training, if let's say they're doing building searches, it's like, okay, it's your turn. They go grab the dog out of the car, run up to the door, make canine announcements, send the dog in. He finds someone, they drag the dog back to the car and put him up. Well, what I've encouraged the guys to do is to, hey, don't just take your dog out of the car when it's your turn. Get him out of the car. They have to learn the skill of doing nothing. Like, it's wait your turn, be polite. Like, at the stage that most patrol dogs are at, because people get worried, well, am I going to lose the intensity when I need it? And I was like, no, if this is a police dog and it's the right dog for the job, he needs to learn to control himself, and it doesn't mean that you need to be super aversive based to get him. He's just not going to get to move on.
Needs experience, just learning that it's not his turn in some ritual that's clear that says now it's your turn.
Exactly. By the end of the seminar yesterday, where every time we're having like our group kind of breakdowns and after action reports, everyone's dog's out and they're just hanging out while we're sitting here talking. And I'm like, that's the kind of experiences that they need. It's going to help you be able to get this dog to know. There are going to be times that you're going to be really excited, but there's also a lot of the time most of the time you're going to be like this.
Sit and hang out.
Did you do sport before police stuff?
A little bit. I started at a French ring club in Florida. I compete with my dog right now in PSA.
I was just saying that's why you're a good guy for this job, because when I was watching, I was with this, I'm a sport guy, so I was like, this is shit we do all the time, you know, like
Right,
we care about that the dog has the flexibility and can wait their turn and all that stuff. So I was like, oh man, these guys need the stuff that we take for granted or that we're doing, and that's why I was like, that's why Michael, he's a sport.
A lot of the like encourage all the like police. It's more easier accepted today, but when I'm trying to encourage the police canine handlers to be like, hey, just go check out some sports stuff, like, and then I'm like, what gets them every time, and it also gets me, is I think my favorite sport exercise of all time is an object guard.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, the amount of
Police dogs that you're teaching to do object.
I'm not teaching them, but I show them, hey, look at this behavior.
Possible.
Yeah, look at this dog by itself, being able to deal with all of this, make these kind of decisions with no influence.
It's
we
really
can probably get your dog
amazing
to just hang out here when we talk.
It is true. That exercise is just mind blowing. Yeah.
Do you guys think that? I kind of got the sense that you were trying to emphasize, like, elevating, like, the cops that were here as trainers themselves, like, be like, you guys aren't just handlers, you're trainers. And so I felt like you were trying to give them actionable things that they could leave with to do. Do you think you accomplished that, and or is there room for you to?
I think we planted seeds for sure.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest takeaways I heard from them was, wow, we didn't really focus on so much how simple some of these concepts were.
Yeah.
We had been over complicating some things, or looking past the simple solution. You know, like sometimes the Occam's razor kind of concept.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's this, but it might be just hang out with my dog.
Yeah.
Do nothing.
I think showing them that your dogs that you have right now with minimal focus that's been on mental flexibility, it's possible. Like they can do, once they see that it's kind of possible, and it didn't take like a bunch of like fancy tricks or anything wild, then I think that to them is the most like kind of enlightening, somewhat empowering of like, oh man, I can do this. You know, it doesn't,
because it isn't complicated. It's time and patience.
Patience, that was the thing,
It's like when you first start that work, especially with a dog that wasn't prepared for it, even if you're doing it at the right time with a dog that was prepared for it, you can have some really messy sessions where you just hang and you hang and you hang, and the dog takes a long time to give up on their hopefulness because of that thing. Yeah. And most people give up before that. They're like, I tried that chilling out thing, it didn't work, right? And it's like, I guarantee if you stayed the course, it would work, right? But you have to be willing to hang there and do nothing, and then just decide to leave, and come back and hang again, and decide to leave until the dog goes like, all right, we're hanging, right?
Yeah.
And then they as practice as all the other stuff.
And there's an acceptance of that, right? And if you can build it into, then you have, once you've created, you have the opportunity of creating cues for it. Right?
Yeah.
So now you, in the beginning, don't cue anything. You just show them, like, and then you can put a ritual to it or any kind of cue. Like,
Well, you're hitting it. So that's the next topic I want to bring up. You know, rituals, habituations, and signals or cues. So talk about that and how important that is, especially for dogs that do multi-discipline. So whether it be the average, let's say from the world that Natalie does a lot of, the sport community that does not just one sport, it's not just nose work, they do a bunch of them, to the operational police dog. How important are these signals or cues, rituals, and habituations to help create clarity to what we do? And I'll add one thing that we started sharing recently was a end of search signal. We have a search, go seek, whatever. And then now we start teaching people all done, finish, whatever it is, as a bookend. You can start searching immediately afterwards if you needed to.
You could tell them you're searching again.
But by having that, without having that before, the dog just kind of had to assume when they were done. And there's value. So I'll let you guys kind of just go further or deeper with that as you want, but talk about these things and how important it is for their communication and clarity. I'll kick it off, I guess.
I think it's critically important, mainly because a lot of times that can be, Michael talked about it a little bit, you can let context drive it a little bit in the beginning. I'm developing a young dog. I have my bite work area. I have my searching area. I have my obedience area. And I let the context cues of the area help me while my dog's learning skills. Like, I go to the food lab and we're going to work obedience stuff or whatever that's going to be, right? So you are using context to drive that. The finished dog can't be context.
Yeah.
We don't want it to be context.
Yeah.
I might have to search in this building for a person. I also have to search in this building for drugs or bombs or whatever. Yeah. And so I have to be able to tell you which one it is when we do it. And then you have to be able to toggle. So once you've kind of created, you can get your dog to switch mental gears, then you want to put some kind of cue on that. And it could be the ritual of how you take the dog out of the car. Some people use equipment. I don't like equipment for it because then you're reliant on the equipment. Like you can come up with, you just tell the dog. Like in Mondio Ring, we just tell the dog what's coming.
Yeah.
Like you're going to do a retrieve now, right? And then you could have other physical ones. You could have them on different sides of your body. You can touch them in a certain way before you do those activities. And then just through repetition, you can say, you think you're going to do this, but I'm telling you you're not. And the dog goes, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, we're standing in front of a building. I really would like to go do a bite work search, but no, we're going to go in there and you're going to detail the rooms, right?
I think that I was thinking about the reinforcement, the economics of the whole thing when I was watching the police dog things. And I think what sport trainers do is that we create equity between these different
as much
skills
as we can.
better than I think what I saw demonstrated by the police people. And so like a tough switch even was going from the scent detection stuff to the obedience work, like with the first skill transfer that we had. And we had talked about this, but the dogs were all edging towards the detection stuff because they like to hunt anyway. And then quick reinforcement was coming with it. Like they're finding their shit. It was an easy problem, right? And so boom, they're getting paid right away. And then we're asking the guys to go back to obedience. Then they'd do 10 minutes of obedience, not pop a toy out once.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And so if that's kind of like the dog's expectation between those two things, you can probably have all the rituals you want. They're just going to fight that shit. And so I thought what would be, and I don't know how much, like, you know your audience and you say like, hey guys, let me talk to you a little bit about reinforcement and the matching law, which you're probably going to talk about more now.
There we go.
Are you?
There we go. Yes,
no,
absolutely.
I mean in the future, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And I just thought, like part of what they would need to hear is to understand that it's a tough transition from this skill to this skill because of all the reinforcement, the actual reinforcement that exists with this, the lack of it here. So when you ask a dog to move from this one to this one, you better up your game over here and pay him a lot more. And so when they understand that, I think that that also says you're a trainer, man. Like you need to sort of facilitate this switch, and it's on you to actually make it better.
Right.
And once the dog is a little more balanced out and like the desires to do both things, whether that's realistic or not, then a ritual preceding that is much more helpful.
Yeah. It's like establishing kind of almost like predictable behavior in that kind of on what you were saying and what you were saying before you start to build the actual rituals or cues matters. We had a dog just out here when we were doing one of like the you get to see the guy but you don't get to bite him, now go to detection work. And we were telling him, okay, you can put him back in the car for a second, take him out, do a little bit of obedience and get his brain with you. And the handler was kind of following those instructions. We talked about them paying.
Down the dog at the corner.
Yeah. So then he goes over and puts his dog at the corner of the building and downs the dog. And he was just about to get his mind with him. He goes over to the corner of the building and downs the dog. As soon as he does that, you can see everything in that dog's being saying, oh, back to biting stuff. Yeah. So I think also them... us being able to point those moments out to them and saying, hey, that right there, see that? That, what do you think his mind is at? And then as soon as we said it to him, he's like, oh man. Yeah, and then I asked him, hey, do you have rituals for it? And he's like, yeah. Okay, what are they? He's like, well, I down my dog before I do detection work. And I was like, okay, what do you do for your bite stuff? Well, I down my dog before I do my bite stuff. I was like, okay, if we want to use that as a part of our ritual, we should have some distinction between the two.
Yeah,
right?
Really
so
well.
You guys did a good job of pointing that stuff out.
And I think they're also, it's true of lots of dog training disciplines, but certainly in law enforcement, there's a kind of different idea around obedience than there is around detection. So people are training detection like a force-free trainer would be. Basically, it's all 100% reward-based. Dogs get the shit rewarded out of them the whole way along, and then you go to obedience, and obedience is like, the dog should do it because he respects me.
I said so.
He's not doing it because he doesn't respect me.
Ask you you want to do obedience? We're like, yeah, obedience. That's why those guys are like, obedience.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so there's that shift in mind. How do you get the same level of reinforcement there where you also have to put rules on it?
Yeah.
So in a sense, you need more reinforcement as the foundation for your obedience because you're going to put more structure and rules on it than you are for your detection.
And we touched on a little bit of that. I said like detection for police dog training, tracking, any kind of like distinction that's using noses. I'm like, how police handlers and a lot of trainers look at that is like it's a voluntary service. Like, well, I hope the dog is up to it today, but then obedience, it's mandatory service. And I was like, I feel like we need to take a little bit of that reinforcement, happiness from detection and put that to obedience, and then a tad bit of the obligatory stuff to your detection. Right? Like, hey, when I need you to do detection, I need you to do it. It's not like if you're up to it today.
Right. And the idea that, hey, you don't rip at source, you don't do hey, there's structure to these things, and I might ask you to pause in the middle, and if I call you back, you have to come back.
Correct.
It's like sprinkle some of this over
not
here.
Like, if you're searching, I couldn't recall you in the middle of searching. Like, no. Like,
because
there's
the
structure
mindset
there too.
In the detection is like you said, force free. Like, don't do this and don't ask them to do anything. Just follow them around, stay out of the way. And there was a couple things. The civilian world got into detection, and they were working with a lot of sport dogs that couldn't do much. And then we had dogs from the professional side where there was a lot of just bad info passed from generation to generation about, version 1 was a lot of detail. Like, you had to walk backwards and present every 12 inches. And then the pendulum swung the other way, and it was like, don't do anything. Just stand there and let the dog do the whole thing. And I'm like, it's not all. We have to find that middle ground. There has to be some things that you do have some control over. You do have some direction, some collaboration with your dog. Because you are a team at the end of the day. And the team doesn't work if you're just a guy holding or the gal holding the leash and just going, I hope they tell me.
Well, we had that single purpose detection dog here as well, and he's like, well, I'm only single purpose, so I don't know about skills transition. And it's like, no, there is skills transitions with this. His dog was older as well. And I was telling him, hey, like, if you're going to go do a search, it was a jail dog. You're going to do your searches, and then there's times where you need to go from this area over to the next area to search. How do you do that? He's like, well, the dog kind of just drags me around and I go over there. And I was like, yeah, but imagine if we could say, hey, your job here is done. Let's get into some obedience and some control. And now instead of wasting all of that energy, now you can take that, kind of bottle that up, go over to the next starting location, and then begin your search again. And what was cool is he had a search that night
before or last day.
And he's like, it worked.
That's beautiful.
I was going to say, I thought that was also an important thing. You guys did a good job of pointing this out to the guys that were here, but that the dog was committed to the thing that they had asked them to do presently before they asked them to do the next thing. So you slowed down and cleaned up their handling. And really, they were sequencing a bunch of activities together. But, like, your dog's in a down, you're about to go do the search, and then a lot of like in day one, you'd see him go back to grab the leash or whatever, and the dog breaks the down and is already headed that way, right, before they had allowed it, or just made sure that thing was the way that they wanted it, so that you could actually reinforce the quality down with the next thing that happened. I thought you guys pointed that out well, but that's also something that I would continue to drill into.
I mean, that's the inexperienced and even, unfortunately, some experienced dog trainers, that idea when you're moving on to more complex things, you stop watching for complete commitment to each of the things, the steps along the way. You're like, this is kind of half-assed, but that's not what we're doing right now, so I let it go, and that erodes.
Just degrades whatever is there.
What you've got there. That idea that, like, hey, if you're going to your place to chill before you go, then we take the time necessary to make sure you've really done that. If you're in a down, you're staying in that down, and you're showing me commitment to that down before we move to the next thing. Just drawing their attention to that for sure.
Absolutely. So you brought it up, and I want you to kind of expand upon it, matching law. I love sharing it a lot now in my lectures because there's a lot of things that come from that. But just kind of for the viewers, and then break out the book. But for
what is it then?
The viewers and listeners watching, it's such a great explanation that you give, so I'd love for you to share it for everybody that...
Well, how do you give it when you talk to people?
Almost the same way you do. When we go into...
All right, prove it. You do it. Cameron, leave the room. You do it, and then Cameron come back.
A little test. Well, basically, when there's...
I'm going to find the Herrnstein definition, 1963.
Where they have, basically, it was this way. We put a rat in a box, and the box has just a lever in it. And they press that 700 times. Then the next, we put them in another box, and that box has a button in it. And they press the button 300 times. Then the next box we put a button and a lever together. which one gets pressed. And the one with the most history is going to get the most, aptitude for the dog to
and
go.
It's even more precise than that. It's like, so that the crux of it is an animal will distribute its effort across behaviors in proportion to the relative reinforcement associated with them.
So if
That
this
sounds
one's
like a
been
mouthful.
but if this one's been reinforced twice as much as this one, the dog will choose 2/3 of the time
To
this
do
one
that.
and 1/3 of the time this
Yeah,
one, right?
yeah.
Which
So
is-
they're spreading it out.
Yeah.
They don't just do the one that they have more reinforcement. They
Yeah.
will do both.
Yep.
But it will be
one
to
that
some
has the
degree in
most.
proportion.
Yeah.
to
And to me, I think what really stood out to me about it is that there's also just those intrinsically reinforcing behaviors. So when
Yes.
we're like detection, like we
Yeah.
talked about, when it's the dogs already kind of want to do it, they've been selected because they have that desire. They want to do that more naturally than they want to do any obedience. So they're getting reinforcement for doing that, and on top of that, they're also getting whatever tangible reinforcer we
right,
have.
100%.
And I bring it back even more specifically in the detection realm. How long have I been trained and reinforced for this odor as opposed to this odor? And if these two odors in the same space, which one are they probably more likely to go to? Another version, context version detection. I'm searching a vehicle, but the odor's not on the vehicle. It's 6 to 8 feet on the ground off to the side. If the dog is so focused on the vehicle, even though the odor's over here, the context part of that history is going to be, I'm searching the vehicle, despite the stimulus that I've been reinforced for off to the side, unless they have, because there's that struggle. I mean, I did an experiment in Europe where they had like the brick wall, and then I put the odor on a post right behind the brick, like directly behind where the dog's facing. It was so hard for dogs to turn around off the brick wall to go this way that there was odor there.
Yeah.
Because of the
Yeah,
context was always this. So what I want handlers to think about on the detection side when it comes to matching law is how to equally distribute some things if we start seeing it go cattywampus, when we start seeing a dog choosing this over that. And that's kind of what I want to like.
And I feel like it's one of those things you're always going to chase and you're never going to get right.
You hit it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, for
it's-
sure.
Well, it's
you don't want to get
But not being
radically
aware
out
of it is what I see as the biggest problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
and understanding that it's a law. Like, and it is rigorously
Gavel.
studied by like crazy mathematicians. Like I was talking, so where this all came from is I did a number of chicken workshops last year with Bob Bailey. It was the last time he did them, and I did that not because I was incredibly interested in training chickens, but I wanted to be around that dude before he didn't do it anymore. He doesn't do it anymore, so that was just like part of my thing.
Yeah.
And this was something that came up as the matching law. And this guy Herrnstein in 1963 had come up with it. Let me just give the definite. I pretty much got it when I said it.
Good job. Good job.
Like, but an animal allocates its behavior in proportion to the reinforcement of each behaviors within that set of behaviors. It's like, it's got two options. Like Michael said, this one's got twice as much reinforcement history, so it's going to do that one more often. But the things that we also have to consider are like, and when they play with this in a more sophisticated way, is they change like the magnitude of reinforcement associated with each one, and that how that affects it. Whether the way it receives reinforcement is like actively pursuing it or chasing it here, or whether it's just getting it handed to them. And so there's a hedonic nature to it, like because not all rewards are the same.
Right.
Like some are better. Not all punishers are the same. Like, and so with the dog that has got not only a higher the scent detection work, to your point, intrinsically valuable to be able to use their nose and go find their thing. Plus the frequency of the reward comes really fast, right? Because they're solving the problems really quickly. And plus they're getting their big old tug that gets tossed over their head and then they get to go
Bounces
chase it
there,
over,
yeah.
right? And then you go like, hey bro, let's go do some obedience over here. You're gonna have to expend a ton more energy, do a bunch of more difficult shit. Like there's a huge cost to this. And plus, I'm just gonna like kind of half-ass bring the toy into your face afterwards. It's a bummer. So you're never gonna sell them on that stuff.
Yeah.
And so the whole like the conversation about reinforcement is really fun in that sense, because these guys becoming trainers, you point it out to them, and then you give them ways to interact with toys differently. You say, hey, if you're trying to match this activity with this one, and you know that this one is weaker, then you better make this easier. You better reinforce quicker. You better play with them better.
Bigger,
all that stuff,
yep.
because, dude, it's like an incredible challenge to make that.
Yeah.
And it's just fun. It doesn't mean that like it's just. Especially when all you got like in this particular thing that you guys did, the important thing was that the animal could accept the transition more easily, the skill transfer. why not make it that much easier and just say, hey, dude, if the crux of this is that they just accept this more quickly, and that's like what we're doing here, then that makes it easier for them to do it.
100%. Yeah.
The other thing I thought about, and I'll stop, but was like with the skill transition thing was, you said it, like the contextual cues thing. I thought like when the dogs were going from biting you in the room and then coming out into the living room area in the cafe.
Yep.
And did you think that after watching some dogs come in and struggle, did you think the scent problem was too hard?
No, not really, because almost all dogs found it with minimal, but the problem was they weren't settling. They weren't searching with efficiency.
But what if this? What if we just said like part of trying to deal with the matching law would have been make this behavior easier, give it a chance to happen quicker with a higher reinforcement. Would you have put the lineup out there?
Well,
like
yeah,
contextual. So the dog goes, I just bit, that shit was great. I know exactly
Here's a
what
big
I'm doing.
context.
So that's what we did day one, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So we did do that day one where they had something that they knew really well.
Yep.
So the boxes, the lineup, or that wall that we had.
Yeah.
So they loved that. It was to your point.
Yeah.
They went from biting him to going right over to the wall and going, "Yep, this is no problem."
No,
then,
that was obedience to.
obedience to wall.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Then, yes, when we lifted the level up to bite work. We could have gone.
You made the problem harder. I'm just saying, like,
and that goes back to your.
that's
point.
just where my head was at.
Yeah.
When I was like, because this shit, that was fun to me. It was fun. You guys played off each other so well. I was watching that shit. I loved it, and that's where my head was at.
Well, no, and you're right, and that goes back to well, crap. I only have 3 days, and I have to show these different things.
Yeah.
And the way around that, I think, is to really impress upon them to think the way Forrest is talking about, having them think.
Yeah.
For
Like,
them,
when you up the difficulty on one side of these transitions, criteria drops, and you make it easy for them on the other end. Whether it's a change of context that's really clear, an easy search, quick.
I think
I think that
quite a bit.
absolutely.
You guys did great.
I think the context when we did day 3 when we went out to the jail, there was a couple. So for me, usually when we're trying to introduce this to older dogs, I try and use a bit more context and potentially not dirty up odors if they're going to really struggle with that. So what we did when we went to the jail is we had an open field, and there were 2 or 3 dogs there that did article searches, like evidence searches. I really like that as my kind of first almost introduction to it, because searching a building for dope
Going from
one thing to the other.
Yeah.
Because searching a building for dope and searching a building for a man is very similar versus like, okay, here's this wide open field. There's obviously
no decoy
hiding out here. I'm going to kind of helps ease that, again, shift that criteria a little bit smaller, and then they get out and get to hunt that way.
That's good. Good dog training.
And it worked perfect. Like those dogs that could do it, it worked great for them.
Yeah.
You know, but tell them about the one dog who went right to it and said, "Nope, not yet."
Oh man,
that was a great little story to tell there.
There's a Natalie and me were. I think I have it on video. We're sitting out there, so the dog does good in the bite scenario.
What dog?
Yeah, the all black shepherd. No, not that one.
No, it was the one not from that county, but from the other county over there. It's like a Dutchie almost.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I know the guy. Yeah.
So he
Corbin.
he goes and does pretty good on the bite scenario. Comes out really gathered. Dog gets out there. He's like, oh, open field. Obviously, no one out here. Handler cuts him off, gives him kind of a search command. He's searching really nice. You see a really nice change of behavior. Gets over to where the article is. Kind of locks up for half a second. Touches on our criteria, right? We could have shifted what we're asking in that criteria and just paid him there for that. The handler had a little bit higher expectations, but it was very obvious he found it. Then the dog continues on, like searching and searching. So we end up, the goal of the exercise isn't so much to find the article, but just to change your track of mind. So he changes track of mind. We kind of just call it, give him an all done signal. And then we're talking, and I'm asking him, so is this something common that he does? And he's like, well, sometimes he does it. We're kind of new to this. And I was like, all right, when you set up, you're doing an article search, what does that look like? He's like, well, he finds the article, I pay him, and I'm like, okay, and then what? And he's like, well, then I'm just take him back to the car and put him away. And I was like, explaining to him that, hey, again, this is intrinsically valuable for him to hunt out here. So he's like, okay, well, the article's here, but when I do that thing, the game is
the
over.
game's over.
If I just mess around, I get to stay out here longer and hunt and search around. So,
And we share exactly that now more frequently than nose work world, because that's what happens. These dogs sit in cars throughout the day or wherever the staging area is. They come out, they find the things really quickly, and in the sport world, it's like super fast. They find it, then they get put away. So you have some dogs that like purposely linger, like if they're like, I'm not going to there yet because I'm not satiated in my searching. I love hunting. And then they always get frustrated because now this brings it to where I want to go with like we talked about, bring the dogs into space to kind of settle and relax. But now at the end, we don't want to signal that it's over and now you're going to get put away. We should have the conversation about how to have more of like a reinforcing event where we're spending time after you've done it so it's really fulfilling. And I really want to do this thing, not that it's a predictor that this game ends.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we do, like, it's not that we don't want it to end immediately. Sometimes we do. Like, sometimes, this is the end of the game. Yeah. But we have to figure out...
this can't always be the end.
Exactly. We have to figure out how to get the dog to not think... It's like the common outing problem, right? It's like, at least patrol dog outing stuff. It's like, we got to finish on a win, right? So we tell him to out, he doesn't, we punish him somehow, and we try again, and he gets to bite again. He doesn't out, finally, after 5 or 6 reps, he outs without a correction, and we're like, okay, he did great, let's put him in the car.
You just punished
Well, then he says, I'm never going to out again, because that means the game is done. When I do bad, I get to stay out here, right? So figuring out ways... to me, again, violate that contract, violate what the expectations are. Sometimes you do want to use putting them away as kind of a punitive measure, right? But being aware of that.
Especially if it should be the other way around. If they don't out, and if I get them to out, you're getting put away. This goes back to what you said a minute ago, hedonic value. So expand upon that a little bit for the audience because hedonic value, something that we would view as punishing for some dogs, they view as this is great, I like it. And it actually has a positive feeling for them, not a negative feeling that we may perceive. So either one of you guys can kind of take because I think Stuart Hilliard does it really well when he talks about it, and you guys are obviously close friends with him, but talk about the hedonic value and what that perception is to the dog, and it may not be what we think it is.
It's kind of Stuart's term, too.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And basically, traditional discussion of reinforcement and punishment wasn't talking about how the dog felt about it, how the animal felt about it at all. It was like, did it make behavior more likely or less likely? And so a lot of our language around reinforcement, there's an assumption about how the dog feels about it. How the dog feels about it is the hedonic value, like hedonism, the
how pleasant.
Pleasure seeking, how pleasant or unpleasant
how
is it, right?
Yes.
And so that is how the dog's taking it. And to your point, this is something we talk about all the time. It's not our idea of what's punishing or
we
not
don't
punishing
determine
or what
it.
we don't determine it. The dog determines it, right? And what we think may be punishing to one dog isn't punishing at all. They don't find it hedonically aversive at all. And what we think should be reinforcing or hedonically pleasant for one dog, they may not find that either. So kind of understanding that and being flexible and aware of
basically like through the dog's eyes, their
through
interpretation.
The dog's eyes. Absolutely.
Of what, okay.
And if you're talking about the pure, like a lot of our terminology around dog training comes from Skinnerian discussions of the neo-behaviorists in that world, and they didn't care. They were not like nothing's
rigid.
inside and like
It made it more. And the question with the hedonic value is it's reinforcing how reinforcing.
Right.
Like how and it's stamped. Is it one time and it's stamped that shit in for like a long time, or is it you got to put a bunch of mass and kind of collect the reps on it?
It's a discussion that you and I and Stuart had at one point too, which I thought is like really fascinating in the world of reward-based training. In that world, we can vary the value of rewards or the hedonic value of reinforcement up to a point, right? I can't say like this level, this level, this level, this level. Right? I can't finally tune my reward to exactly the level of value that I want it to. I can say, hey, food rewards are hedonically this valuable to you, and I could go to a toy. I could play more dynamically. There are ways, but I might have a few different levels of reward.
Modulate it.
And on the punishment end of it or the aversive thing, I can have a lot of variability in there. We actually have more control on that end of it than we have on the reward-based end of it, which is kind of a fascinating thing to think about. When we started discussing that, I'm like, it's true. And in the dog training debates these days, right, they tend to say, oh, if you're using aversives, it's all or nothing. We actually have more control over the level of aversiveness than we do over the level of reinforcement. Which is a fascinating idea.
Helped
I can
with
be really
signals,
light.
too.
Exactly. All those things are kind of interesting.
Both positive punishment and negative punishment.
100%. Yeah. And negative punishment we have is less than positive punishment because we omit reinforcement there. What reinforcer are we omitting? What was the dog expecting to get? And if I deprived him of something that was very valuable to him, maybe that's more aversive than if I tapped him with the prong collar. Like frequently it is, right? For sure.
Well, we see like to me a lot of the times, and we talked to the guys about it this week. A lot of the times that we see like handler aggression with police dogs start to rear its head. I would say it's probably more related to the negative punishment side of things than the positive punishment, right? It's like, hey, you think you're going to do this thing, and it's a lot of times unintentional negative punishment.
They're taking you back to the car.
Yeah, no, you're not, and I physically pull you away. That's when we start seeing that displacement and things start to go awry, where one of the ways that I've combated that is just, hey, instead of physically moving the dog in these moments, use your obedience to just, hey, good job done. Like, now let's heal. We're going to go over this way, and you can give reinforcements over here, whatever it may be. But yeah, I see that makes sense to me that the negative punishing things would be.
It can be, because we're talking about highly motivated dogs, right? And once they're at a level of arousal and they have some expectation of reinforcement and it's high enough, deprivation is going to create a lot of frustration.
And I think a byproduct of skills transitions is also avoiding some of those moments where we have to be a little bit more physically controlling of the animal.
If when they're in those heightened moods.
If they understand, hey, you can be here, and then I can get your brain with me, and we can do this. We can avoid some issues, and that goes into officer safety, a lot of things, right?
Sure.
Do you guys are you thinking about softening the blow of negative punishment or like complete omission? You said like maybe take the dog over here and pay it like a lesser thing, or some people, I see some strategies in some sport work is like the dog expected, let's say, a toy, and that's the most preferred thing, and they're also aware the dog could take food in that situation, but it's less than toy, and so they would signal that you don't get the thing that you were really hoping for, because this wasn't good enough or whatever, but I'm still going to signal food, which doesn't completely.
Well, I started doing that actually a little bit with the patrol dog work because I got to spend a day with dolphin trainers.
Yes.
And they were doing like the LRS, least reinforcing behavior, where they would have them kind of stack and like wait for a second. And
that's
I was
where
like,
it comes from.
Yeah, and I was like, you know what, this is a pretty interesting concept. Based off of what they're dealing with. Like I'm not a dolphin expert, but they seem like a pretty aroused animals in these moments.
When were they using it? What the dolphins?
It was just almost for like a wrong signal, like not
incorrect response, and then they would have to go do that, and they would still get little bits of.
Like, they would bring them back. They could call it staging. So let's say we said dolphin jumped through the hoop, and the dolphin flapped its tail instead. They would bring it back and give it a signal for LRS signal. It would come and it would stage in front of them the same way that it would stage if it did the right behavior. But they would pause for a second, and then they have two buckets. They have like the mackerel, the good stuff, and then the one that I'll take.
Good doggy treats and bad doggy treats.
And they would give it this.
You get the bad doggy treat, but if I like the bad doggy treat better than the good doggy treat.
But they what's important about it is what negative punishment used to be an all or nothing thing.
Yes.
Right. And so and
that's
with certain animals in certain situations like killer whales and stuff like that could be a really bad,
dangerous.
Training to bamboo.
And Malinois. Some Malinois.
So it lets you facilitate and modulate negative punishment in a way that like we didn't think, and so that's kind of a smart deal.
And I think the other thing, like a lot of times when we try and use negative punishment without kind of a signal with it, I'm not sure that we hit the mark. Like I don't know, is this dog processing that this is what caused the loss of
It's
this.
such
you know?
an important point.
Yeah, because it's like, hey, I think that, I give the example, like, hey, you guys met Brielle, my daughter, and I was like, hey, well, she really likes her iPad. She doesn't really care too much about a calculator. And if she does something bad at school and I take her calculator away, she's the hedonic value of that doesn't matter. But at least I can explain to her.
That's reinforcing.
Yeah, exactly. I can at least explain to her and say, hey, you did this. This is why you've lost now your iPad, right? Or you've lost. But for a dog, sometimes they're like, well, they didn't, they were searching and they didn't find the odor that I wanted, or they were messed off and went and did something. So I pulled them away from that opportunity. And it's like, well, if we don't have a way of like really signaling to them that is what caused it, how are we sure that we're...
I think the signaling is essential.
Yeah.
There are very limited situations in which it's clear to the dog. Like there are spots where it's pretty obvious, right? We're teaching the dog to go in and do a hold and bark, and the dog bumps the sleeve, and you take them away.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
There was a moment, it happens, you're like, great. Like the dog's trying to come out of crate, they start to lean forward, you close the door.
Yeah.
Right? That kind of thing. There's places where you can do it SON signaling. Almost everything we care about, you have to be able to signal it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're not going to take the lesson that you wanted.
Yeah, we're just like, well, hopefully they figured
figured out that's why they left the field. But maybe they did, maybe they didn't.
Which goes
More
back
frequently
to the whole
they
thing
did.
about markers, because the common argument we'd hear from the sport world all the time is you shouldn't use markers because you don't know what you're marking. And I'm like, it's actually, if I'm just delivering reward, I don't
Who
even know
says that
the
shit?
Oh, yeah. Don't even get Natalie started on this.
I haven't heard that in a long time.
no.
Wait, what did you say?
It's specifically in the detection dog sport world.
Don't use a marker because you don't know what you're marking.
You don't know what you're marking for. You can be
Because
marking.
you're not
That's just
sure
like
what the dog
saying,
was thinking,
don't reward
like-
your dog because you
'Cause
don't know
you
what
don't
you're
know.
rewarding for.
That's my point. Me walking up and delivering food, I'm probably not marking or not rewarding what I'm thinking.
You certainly aren't rewarding the thing you wanted to. You're rewarding 10 things later.
It's a
pure
crazy
nonsense, yeah.
concept.
You're
that-
speaking
that's-
maybe like still in some detection realms, like that's
Yeah, so in the sport detection realm, there's an organization that is highly against using markers because they don't believe the trainers or handlers know what they're marking for. And because of that, they say, you just got to do direct food delivery. Go up and deliver the food to the dog.
that's so.
How do you know what you're rewarding?
100%.
Paying
100%.
You're paying at source.
Yeah,
the
so their
source
mind is-
paying the dog.
Because I went to source, I paid there. That's why they know.
got it? Oh.
Which is a completely, everything's changed. The minute you walked in or said the word alert, you've changed that entire sequence.
They need to go to a chicken workshop.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say they're wrong.
Yes.
It just was hard to wrap my head around that.
Believe me, and we try to share
Name the organization.
perspectives. Yeah.
I was
Yes, exactly. But what we do is we try to share. There's a couple of things you need to consider and look at it from a reasonable standpoint. What are we really doing? Are we just doing it? So part of the argument is, well, I shouldn't use it in this term, but they're like handlers are too new and too inexperienced, or lack of term, they're too stupid to figure it out. That's the way they would say it. And it's not that, but my job as a trainer is to make sure that you understand what's going on, make sure the dog knows what's going on.
Yeah.
So to kind of pass the buck and say, well, the handler isn't skilled to do this, means I failed as a trainer to take the steps to teach them how to do it.
unless somebody spends the time to teach them, they're never going to.
They're not
good enough.
It's
It's the teacher's conundrum. They can't do it. So
And I think that
how did you
attitude
get to do
overall
it?
is not limited to that, right? Like a lot of times when with the police dog work, some of the bite sport dog work, it can be sometimes like an undertone of like pretentiousness
Yes.
of that, like, well, you don't need to worry about this, like. And I'm like, hey man, like if I could figure it out, I don't think that I'm like the smartest person in the planet. Thank you, man. If I could figure it out, thank you. Anyone can figure it out, you know. Like it's making sure that the information is digestible as well.
correct.
And that's the only way we make future trainers, and the whole thing goes forward. It's essential.
You know, the marking for when the dog gets into odor and shows like some searching thing.
Forward
Is that
motion
kind of
odor.
it? Like, how do you know the dog is actually in odor?
That's their stance of their argument.
Got it.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't really matter because you're going to when you
Searching.
deliver a reward,
Effort.
you're marking.
Yeah.
Like you're not a verbal marker, but a a physical marker. My moving forward towards source, I'm marking imminent reward. If I've done that 5 times, me moving forward, the dog goes, here comes the reward. So I am marking
even reverse,
and rewarding something.
Even in reverse, which they don't address enough, is the standing still part.
Yeah.
Because the handler knows the odor's there, so they won't move anywhere. And then the trainers get mad at them later on, like, gotta keep moving. And then we do all this, like I call it, like grape crushing dancing moves, which all are still predictors that rewards being delivered. Just a new predictor, but that's accepted by the trainer, versus going, you know what, as a trainer, I should make sure that the dog can handle you standing still, handle you moving, handle you laying on the ground if I wanted you to. You should be able to get the dog to understand all these things are irrelevant. But if we keep putting Band-Aids on these problems versus actually, like we were talking about earlier, addressing the problem to fix it, we just keep regurgitating these same things. It just goes generation to generation as this is the way it's done.
Yeah. Well, I think what you guys were doing this week is the thing that needs to happen is you're introducing a dog training principle.
Correct.
To people.
We're just taking it away that sounds like sexier.
But that's really what it is. Like here's an important concept in dog training, and there's a variety of them. Like in terms of building reinforcement and the idea of how to break behaviors down into pieces to teach them. There's all these general governing principles, and the trainers have to understand the principles because they're the ones that are going to have to troubleshoot it when you're gone. Right. And so that's the job at some point. And so that's to focus a weekend seminar on one very important larger principle like that helps them really get their head around it enough so that they're more likely to make those kinds of decisions when they leave here that you want them to make. Like, how am I going to set up my training? And this was kind of hard, so let's make it easy on all those things are
and to me that's one of the the hard part with the traveling the seminar circuit is like you have 3-5 days maybe with people, and it's like bringing the pixie dust and sprinkling it on and be like, that's not what I want to be associated with. I want to try and figure out ways to leave lasting effects, and maybe it's egotistical, but
the right lasting effects.
Yeah, the right lasting effects that aren't going to be, hey, you came here for the weekend, your dog didn't out on day 1, now it outs on day 3. Problem solved is not how it works.
Not how it works.
There has to be actionable things afterwards, like things that you can take and apply to that can kind of blend into a little bit of what you're already doing, right? If it's too different and it's too, just throw it away. Right. So.
We in what you're saying is probably one of the bigger lessons Natalie and I have done over the past year and a half, and it's being around you and everybody else, is making it where we're saying it's simple enough to understand, execute, make it actionable, and it works within the constructs that they have to work within.
Right.
Because that's the other thing too, is different places have different restrictions or different abilities, different resources, different experience levels. So we want to leave them with things that they can do with what they have, and that formula has been a much more sound approach than us getting, like we used to do, more deep in the weeds on methodologies. Like, we like this method, we want to share it with you, and that's good to a certain level. But
you need both of those things. Right? So one helps people, meets people where they are in their journey, and acknowledges the difficulties that are inherent, that are built into some of the systems, especially around law enforcement. Some difficulties that are baked in to administrative choices and stuff like that, nothing to do with dog training, right? And so you're acknowledging the difficulties that are baked into the system while moving a general understanding further along. So both those opportunities. So once the people start to wake up to some of these ideas, and now you've got them on board, then hopefully they seek out the more detailed, step-by-step kind of way.
And that's kind of how I had, to me, what it felt like is I had it backwards. I was giving the good information because I was passionate about that, and then realizing that they weren't connecting with it because they didn't have the experience yet to kind of know where to put it. And then now meeting them where they're at, giving them some skills, and then it's like, okay, now I'm ready to give you this part and then this part.
Especially if you're on the seminar circuit, right?
Yes.
So like if you stop and you say like, if you want to come here and stay here for X amount of time, then we can go through all that little stuff.
Sometimes you just, at least me, like I'm just get excited about something that I'm like
all the time.
It's like,
so I just want to share with you, and sometimes they look at you like, I don't really care.
that's part of why we do this. Like we follow our curiosities in dog training, and it's such a cool place to do it. But not everybody wants to come along for that ride. So I only pitch you a whole seminar on my latest curiosity in dog training.
I'm the same.
I make
and
it, yeah,
I
I
stick
force
it
it,
in
yeah.
a little bit and whatever it is. Like I go to do a seminar on introduction to markers or whatever,
Yeah.
and I'm obsessed with Pavlovian conditioning or some other thing I'm obsessed with at the time. I'll
gonna be in
sprinkle it in there. I won't spend that whole day on it, but I'm gonna.
But it's getting in here. It's getting in here.
I would say we very much are guilty of that same thing.
Oh,
there's,
yeah.
there's something that we'll throw in there just because, like, whatever that is passionate about in the moment for us.
But I think
people can
the
appreciate
excitement's contagious too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if you're excited about the subject, then
Yeah.
it kind of brings people along
think
too,
so.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's some benefit to that, even though a lot of people would be like, we're not ready for that.
Yeah, they're like,
I think you guys did a great job this week. It was nice to meet you and watch you
You as well. Man.
work. Well, I watched you work. I just sat in a chair. But you have just such a nice way with you, and I think that I can see why these cops like working with you. You know, I think you're bringing just the right message to them, and like with your sport background, and just being a smart trainer, and I don't know, you've got tons of experience. You're bringing all the right stuff to them, and then you two just played off of each other really well. Like it felt like you guys have been doing this for a while.
I think because we come at it with a natural, like we're in the same kind of plane or wavelength or whatever you want to use. We feel very similar about some things.
Yeah.
And, you know, even though we may get there from different directions, which actually makes it good for instruction, because he'll say something that I'm like, ooh, yeah, that resonates for me, but I'm thinking about it in this way, so then I'll share it that way. And
Was it why you don't do bite work with your own dog? Was it that?
Yeah.
Resonate with you? We'll save that. We'll tell Michael later.
We're going to get off air. There's a great analogy.
Share that one with everybody.
Oh, I was banned from saying
Sounds good.
Why, as a police dog handler,
Knock
you
it off,
don't
move
want
on.
to. But it's really, really good. His wife is like, no, don't do that anymore. To take it, I'll take it to his last part for and to kind of end the discussion on this. We talked about a second ago, omission, and one of the things that we teach a lot in our detection is doing blanks and using blanks to actually really build reliability in the dog. But what makes people feel really weird, and they're not used to seeing their dog go through the omission of odor in the space. There's no odor there, and you'll see really cool behaviors start happening. To me, I find it cool and fascinating that when there's no odor there, the dog searches harder, and it starts putting in more effort because it's like it's got to be here somewhere. But then in turn, the handlers read that behavior shift and go, "There's got to be something here now because I'm seeing it search harder." And then as soon as that happens, handler behavior starts changing, and the dog goes, "Oh, I know what that means.
I should
indicate." Yes. So, from your guys' point of view, how would you guys like talk to somebody about how to navigate the omission of a stimulus? And I know where this goes because it goes into the signal part of it. Like, at what point do we say, okay, how do we get there? Like, number one, like, what's the steps to build omission in and build it like in a robust way that they're okay with it? But then two, how to then let them know that in the absence of the stimulus, we're finished, and that be reinforcing.
Right.
So how would you guys like? I know you said you know. Go ahead.
So the way I conceptualize it is the first step is obviously concrete setup search areas that are blank that you know your dog is searching well, your dog knows how to find stuff.
Yep.
You're going to do a blank, and so you know there's no odor there.
It's like a simple setup, like
Simple setup.
containers, boxes, etc.
Watch the dog's behavior closely because that's going to be the key for people. Like one of the things about detection is eventually you're not going to know whether there's something there or not, and so the difficulty is in your ability to read your dog,
Yes.
right? And just differentiate interest from actual being on odor, differentiating levels of intensity that come with lower amounts of odor. You're going to have to figure all that stuff out. So the first time you do one, you watch the dog's behavior really closely. You don't make it a long one. And then I would build in some signal that says, nice job, let's go. And then I would move out of the area and I would do something reinforcing for the dog.
Absolutely.
I might
LSR.
not make a big play thing out of it, but I might make a little play and out you, or even do a food reward,
Say
or
food
sit there and
tosses,
rub
yeah.
on you, like whatever. Good job, way to go, hang out. But a clear termination signal, right, that says like, okay, good job, let's go, right, or whatever you build in. And that's how I'd handle it.
Yeah.
So you maintain that, right,
Yeah.
portion. And then it's like anything else. Like sometimes you are going to, you could give a bigger reward, and sometimes it's just a pat and off you go because the dog recognizes the signal and you kind of work through it that way. So I think about approaching it. Right.
It's constructing it the right way. Would you guys add anything to that?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, I think we probably talked about this before, like detection handlers, I find get focused so much on like odor recognition and forget that what detection really is, it more importantly is the searching side, right? And
it's not called finding, it's called searching.
Yeah, exactly. So like I think it kind of almost goes a little bit to the matching law stuff. Like if they only ever get paid when there's odor there, well then that, even though we want that to be what is really valuable, we can start to lose value in the searching portions of things. So yeah, I do think having some signal built into like, hey, a job well done, I'm paying you for the searching that you did, really good searching, is an important thing to do.
And I actually, and I haven't played with it, but I might experiment with occasional release straight to playing in the middle of intense searching.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Or an anchored behavior that you like the Austrians and stuff are doing, like come back between my legs. You're starting searching from there. Your beautiful job. You're intensely searching. I know there's not odor here at this spot. I call you back to place. I pay you. I set you up
in proportion that it doesn't mess with your dog's connection.
Exactly. In proportion. That's what the matching law.
We've done like before dogs are on their target odor, just like toy searches or whatever, blank searches with a dog in a room or in a few rooms, and mid search a toy comes from the heavens. Right. Like so it's like cool. Oh, this is still even though the odor of the toy wasn't out here, just for hunting, you're still have the capability of being paid.
So let me throw the question that they give when we talk about this. Well, what if my dog just stops searching and just wants to look to me to get a toy all the time? And what if because I've introduced this, now they don't want to search as good? So how would you guys respond to that kind of a question when their fear is, well, if I reward for anything other than odor, they're bound just to come to me to hit the easy button and get reinforcement?
You would have to have done that significantly more than the other, right? So the matching law portion would have to be, you've gone out of balance the other way, and it's not something you do. Yeah. We've already typically built more value into the odor in the foundational steps. So by the time you would be rewarding the dog just for searching, like it's not, you wouldn't want to swing it. So that
we would see like I would be speaking out of school about detection stuff, although I'm around a bit of it. But we would see that in our like defensive handler exercises in ring sport. There was a period of time where we would reward the dog, like the handler would reward the dog to themselves. I'm thinking about Cindy and Rush right now, but he was like, this one dog was really focused on his person, and so it was kind of becoming more popular that you would reward the dog to yourself and the defensive handler, even though somebody's going to come up and aggress on you and the dog must bite. And this particular dog liked looking at his handler so much, and the ball he liked almost as much as the biting stuff, that when she started doing that, he totally forgot about the decoy. Right? He no longer searched
this is
a
like
source. He no longer searched a source.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the right strategy. And so I had to go up and like assault her for real. But it's just like it's the same thing. It's like where is the action here, and then also what are the dog's proclivities, or what kind of dog is it?
That's the other side to it is just the nuanced look at each individual dog. Right. Like whenever you talk about dog training in general, we use a broad brush to just kind of, but there's always individuals. There's some things that just kind of run true laws that run true, but we still have to respect kind of the dog,
like individual differences,
and those feel like easy fixes to me. Like
it really is.
When you pose the question, it's like, duh.
But
make it happen there.
But the problem is there's such fear-driven like aspects that get passed around in the dog training world, and that's just one of those things. Is how dare you pay for anything other than odor? Right. And if you do, your dog will be broken. And that's the thing we have to realize.
That's part of just people not being allowed to navigate through. Like when you do that, there's these balances in training everywhere. We're constantly playing with them. And in the beginning, you get out of balance. And you're like, ooh.
Time to make
I messed it up a little bit. Like now I got to go back and.
My dog likes sit more than it likes down.
Exactly. And then
yes, you know where you're working.
Now we know where our work lies, right? And so I think freeing people up of that fear, that phobia, that like one mistake is going to ruin your detection.
Yeah.
Like it's not.
Yeah.
Like,
And behavior changes all the time.
the
It's so
time.
easy to change, and it's like dog training is a lovely playground to goof around. If not, as long as you're not doing heinous stuff or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
of course. Exactly.
But yeah, man, it's
No, I joke all the time.
be comfortable freeing up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm like, you have to be willing to try some stuff. In fact, your dog is resilient because this lasted with you for this long. Because we are very flawed, individuals, and they've made it through us for all this time, and they're still doing just fine. So, yeah,
That one was for Natalie.
yeah.
That's for you, Nat.
Yes, if they can make it through us, they're gonna be just fine. So, but
Maybe it's for Kyle.
well, thank you guys for
it's my
taking the
pleasure.
time to hop on here and just do this fun little conversation. As like I said, we refer to them as trainer jams because it's just we're getting in here and following where the conversation goes, and I hope a lot of the viewers got to enjoy it. But the Michaels, thank you. Forrest, thank you for coming on here.
Cameron, thank
Oh, I
you.
want to tell if people are interested in training chickens. My friend Kirsten in Alabama has chicken workshops that are going on.
There you
Is
go.
that okay that I plug
Oh,
that?
please.
Yeah, dude, go and learn some mechanical skills and train a
What's the
chicken.
business?
Hold on, he'll get her. There you go.
Can you see that?
Back up a little bit.
No, that's really bright.
Back up a
This
little
is
bit.
terrible.
We'll put it in the show notes, and we'll
Yeah,
add
do
it
that.
into the.
I think it's a
the
cool
show
experience.
notes.
Do
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
professional.
go out and train a different animal if you haven't already.
Yep. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in to K9s Talking Sense, where it's okay to be nosy.